He had a mission to fulfill that was given to him from his Father. It was not a mission that would be accomplished only by him. It was a mission that he set in order. He laid the foundation, as we talked about in our class this morning. And from that, the mission continues. Today I want us to notice the mission that Jesus was given and to think about how his mission is the one that we have as well. Tonight we're going to think about how my mission is our mission. And as a church, what are we supposed to be as an assembly of individuals with a mission? How is the church supposed to fulfill that mission that Jesus also had? So today, his mission, my mission. The text that is set before us is a text that Jesus read from the prophet Isaiah. And we find here a good thumbnail sketch of all that Jesus did while he was here and all that he left us when he did. The passage begins in verse 19 by saying that the Spirit of God is upon me. We could not help but recall the baptism of Jesus after he came up out of the water, that John had baptized him. And the Bible reveals how that the Spirit of God descended upon him in the form of a dove. And it was at that moment that the voice of God came out of the heavens and said, "This is my beloved Son. You hear him." In that moment, he was given the spirit of the mission. And God, in his own words, backed up the mission and said, "Now you listen to him. You do what he says. He's the one in charge. He's going to set forth the whole mission." And from that moment, he began to teach his disciples. And that mission was given to them when he sent them out. But then that same mission was not just given to them, it was also given to those who came after them. Paul would write in 1 Timothy chapter 2, to this young man he would say, "The things that you have heard from me, you commit these to faithful men, who will be able to teach others also." This mission that Jesus came and brought, that he started, that he gave to his apostles, those apostles passed it on to the next generation who also were taught to pass on the mission. We then are in a long line, 2,000 years long, of Christians who have been commissioned to have the same mission of Jesus. What we need to consider, what is the mission, and am I doing my part? Consider the mission that Jesus said he came. Verse 18, to preach the gospel to the poor. I don't think it is coincidental that he attached preaching the gospel to the poor. There are other types of people that we find in this passage, but it is the gospel that he attached to the poor. Why would he do that? Well, it makes sense to me that the poor are the ones who are the desperate ones, the ones in need. And these desperate people, what do they need? They need what they do not have. And so Jesus came to bring the message, the gospel, to desperate people who were in need. Why were they desperate? They were desperate because there was a chasm between them and their Creator. And therefore desperate. But this poor could include certainly those disadvantaged with this world's goods. Jesus spent time with people who were financially poor, and in doing so, he established the principle that we too must be people who care about the financially disadvantaged. But it may be that the primary reference in this passage to the poor is about what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5 and in verse 3 as he began that sermon with this beatitude. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. In that position, he is talking about anyone who is desperate and in need, anyone who recognizes the condition of separation, anyone who has a spirit of desperation. He came to bring the gospel to the desperate. I have that mission as well. If you are a child of God, you have that mission as well. It is a mission that says, I once was desperate and in need. I had a chasm between me and my Creator, but no longer. And therefore, I want to help somebody else who has that same desperate need. And so I listened to Jesus tell his disciples in Mark 16, go into all the world, preach the gospel to every creature. He who believes and is baptized will be saved. He who does not believe will be condemned. The mission that he sent with his disciples is the mission that I have. And I have the ability, and so do you, because we were desperate. We were in need. And that chasm has been bridged through our belief and acceptance of Jesus, and having been immersed in water to have that sin taken away. No longer am I desperate and in need. My mission, like his, is to find those people and bring the gospel to the poor. Number 2, he has sent me to heal the brokenhearted. The brokenhearted are those who have been bruised with the difficulties of life. The word translated brokenhearted here is the same word used in Luke chapter 9 in verse 39. There was a father who came to Jesus and said, will you help my son? He's been taken over by a demon. And every now and then, this demon throws him into the water or throws him into the fire. and bruises him. The brokenhearted. Jesus said, I came to heal the brokenhearted. Jesus did not fix every bruise that people had. Jesus came, however, to give them hope in the condition of being bruised. And I think that is the point that you and I need to consider. Certainly, we want to heal physically anyone that we can. We can offer assistance. We can help them get medical attention, and we're all in favor of that. We also need to heal those who are broken mentally, whose pain is not easily seen, but it is in their minds and they are bruised internally. And we should offer help and solace to them and all that we can, giving them wherever we can make connection and help. But we're not going to be able to fix every bruise. There are some bruises, in fact, sometimes many bruises, that we just have to learn to live with. One of the best things that we can do, as was the mission of Jesus, He helped the bruised people of His society to have hope in their condition. I can do that because I've been there. You can do that because you have been there. You've been broken. You've been bruised. You've been battered. The world has done a number on all of us. But we, like Paul in 1 Corinthians or in Philippians could say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Why? Because I know how to abound. I know how to suffer being abased. I know that in whatever state I am, I've learned to be content. One of the greatest things that we can do for the brokenhearted is to give them an understanding of how to be content in their bruised condition, just like Jesus did. I can do that because I've been there. You can do that. Third, to proclaim liberty to the captives. Yes, there were people in Jesus' time who were suffered as slaves. There were people who had difficulty because they were not free. It could also be said that all of the people that Jesus dealt with were under some kind of bondage. The Roman Empire had a control over those people. And so it would make sense to them to hear Him say, I came to bring or to give liberty to the captives. It is interesting that He did not, with one swoop of the hand, end slavery in His time. But He did say this, I have come to seek and to save that which was lost. His overriding concern was not people under physical slavery, but rather people captive under the control of the evil one. It is possible to be in a torturous situation of captivity physically and yet still be free. Because as a child of God, when you're free from sin, no matter what other bondage you might have, you're free. You're really free. Whether it's a bondage of finances, a bondage of mental illness, a bondage of physical disease, and we've heard about so many this morning who are there. Those too are captives who do not feel free. And yet, with Jesus, He came to free the captives. How did He do it? Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Those people under the captivity of the spiritual evil one could still be free because the Spirit of the Lord was with them. That was His mission. I can do that. You can do that. Because I've been freed. And you can free someone else. Because you can say, I have the Spirit of the Lord. I'd like for you to have it. And it offers such freedom. You can do that. Recovery of sight to the blind. There are a number of counts in the New Testament of Jesus healing those who were blind, and even after Him, others did the same thing. I can't imagine living without sight. And yet, while desperate and awful that might be, the worst thing would be to be blind to your own condition. Paul wrote about those people. And he said, the God of this world has blinded them, Ephesians 3:18, through the ignorance and the darkness that is within them. And Jesus said, I want to give sight to the blind. There are so many people in this world who think they know, who think they see, who think they get it. And they are so wise and so smart and so intelligent. And they look down on the rest of us because our sight, 2 Corinthians 5:7, is not on something we can see. We live by faith, not by sight. But they are blind. The God of this world has darkened their minds and blinded them, lest they should see the glorious gospel. Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, if our gospel is hidden or veiled, it is veiled to those who are being lost, whose minds the God of this world is blinded, lest they should see the light of Jesus. His mission was to bring sight to those who don't know themselves and think they've got it all under control. You've been there. I've been there. I know what it's like to think I know the answers, only to be instructed and shown, no, you really don't. His mission was to show them, you can do it. I can do it. To set at liberty those who are oppressed. In Scripture, the oppressed are those who are weaker and the stronger hold it over them. James talked about them twice in his book, where the rich were oppressing the poor and making life difficult for them. Jesus came to take those who thought that they did not have any power whatsoever. There's no one in history who gave power to women more than Jesus did. He gave them place. He gave them meaning. He gave them purpose. And whereas they were not allowed even to be witnesses in court, they were the first witnesses to the resurrection of Jesus. Jesus gave powerless women power. Jesus gave children meaning, power, and purpose. Children were in that society often just cast aside. We don't care about them. But he took a child up in his arms and he said, if you don't become like a child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Jesus was a master at helping the oppressed. We can do that. You know what it's like to be under the thumb of somebody at some time who was bullying you or bothering you in a way that you were oppressed. But to be not having the strength that I need. Paul wrote in 2 Corinthians 12, he said, when I am weak, then I am strong. As he talked about the thorn in the flesh that God would not take away. One of the things that we can do, as Jesus did, is to help people who are in that condition, in an oppressed way, in a beaten down way, where they think they have no power. We can show them what real strength is, and real strength and power comes from being submissive to Jesus and saying, whatever comes, I can take it. I can handle it. Because when I'm weak, then I'm strong. I know what real strength is. You do too. We can do that. And finally, he said, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. There's probably here a reference to Leviticus 25. The Jubilee every 50th year, when everything was freed and everything was fixed and everything went back to how it was supposed to be. All slaves were released. All debts were forgiven. Everything was fixed and returned to its original on the Jubilee year. In the acceptable year of the Lord, everything was fixed. Everything was returned. He brought back to a fallen world the figurative Garden of Eden. And he said, I make all things new. Here I am. And now anyone can be released from all of the debts and all of the problems and all of the difficulties because you find Jesus. I can do that. You can do that. The responsibility is clear. Do you recall what Jesus said in the scene of judgment? The goats and the sheep separated. The goats went off into condemnation, and the sheep into salvation. What made the difference in that story, in that scene, in that sermon? What made the difference? The difference was the sheep took the mission of Jesus as their own. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was sick, you visited me. When I was in prison, you ministered to me. The blind, the brokenhearted, the desperate, the ones who are oppressed. My faithfulness before God is being measured by how well His mission I take as my mission. What about you? I know I can do it. I know you can do it. The question is, are we? Jesus came to heal. Spiritually, He's ready to heal you today if you need it. To become a child of His, to come back to Him, whatever you need, while we stand and sing together.